We are beginning this hour with a late-night court filing from Donald Trump's legal team. And that filing argues that Trump shouldn't be charged in the classified documents case because President Biden wasn't charged in his case. Yes, this is true. I'm a quote from it. President Biden will not be charged, and President Trump should not have been either. Now, never mind that the Biden special counsel, Robert Hur, made clear in his report that the two cases were wildly different. Joining us now, former January 6th committee investigator Marcus Childress. Also with us is former FBI general counsel and NYU law professor Andrew Weissmann. He is the co-host of the MSNBC podcast Prosecuting Donald Trump. Greetings, everybody.
Andrew Weissmann, you and I were on set together when the Hur report broke, and I do wonder, one, if it was always inevitable that Donald Trump's lawyers were going to cite this report as soon as it came out. And also, what we're talking about here specifically is a motion to compel discovery. So I am curious why this becomes relevant in that type of filing.
It's not.
Okay. Short answer.
That's exactly. But to elaborate, yes, it is inevitable that he would make this kind of motion. It is something that is for a different audience than a court of law. It is the court of public opinion. There was no finding that the current president willfully, intentionally retained or disseminated classified information. In the same way, there was no finding with respect to former Vice President Pence. By contrast, a grand jury has voted that there should be charges, and there are charges against Donald Trump. The sort of essentially a selective prosecution argument, which is what has been reported, is dead on arrival. There's simply no basis for it at all.
I mean, Michael, we've seen this time and time again, right? Which is Trump's team not making legal arguments in the court of law, rather making political arguments that they feel serve their candidate.
Well, that's the only reason they're doing any of this. The court, as I've said on many occasions, is a backdrop, Marcus, for this campaign of Donald Trump, and where that backdrop is going to come a little bit clearer into focus is on the immunity question that's coming before the Supreme Court. Just as a reminder for folks out there, the appeals court told us that Trump's immunity don't exist. All right, it ain't there. It's not. It's not a thing. All right, just so people get confused, it's not a thing. How do you see the court looking at this? Everybody's on, appeals watch. Does he make the appeal tomorrow? Because that's the deadline. I'm suspect on that, to be honest. I think Trump is looking at this and going, does he want the embarrassment of his Supreme Court telling him no?
Right.
Or how do you see it?
I think that he is going to appeal a decision. I think it's important to take a step back, though, because we've seen consistency at the district court level and now at the D.C. circuit of checks and balances, right? Mm-hmm. I doubt our founding fathers ever thought that we'd have a dictator running our country. And they made it clear in their opinion by saying, right, that criminal accountability does not outweigh that chilling effect of the presidency. And so I do think that former President Trump is going to file his appeal tomorrow to try to run out that clock and make the Supreme Court say the same thing so that he can be a victim out in the campaign trail as he's been with each loss at the district court level and at the D.C. circuit. I don't think it's really about, maybe losing. I think it's about extending that clock and maybe getting the trial pushed beyond the election.
Andrew, I'm just wondering if in fact, to Marcus's point, that Donald Trump does appeal tomorrow, that then pauses Judge Chutkan's classified documents proceedings, if you will, yet again, the Jack Smith case. And it could be paused for a week, 2 weeks. It could be paused for 3 weeks. It's indefinite. And so could we potentially not see a classified documents trial in federal court be started this year, given the opportunity for delay?
Yeah, so I think, there are two federal trials. There's the one in Florida, the classified documents case. There's one in D.C., the so-called January 6th case. I think with respect to the Florida case, I think it looks like Judge Cannon, who is going to have a hearing in the beginning of March about whether she's going to keep the May trial date. I think the betting money, and I would agree, is that she is not going to have that trial. She seems to basically be consistently ruling for the defense. So I think that seems unlikely to go. With respect to the D.C. case, I agree with Marcus completely that that is what Donald Trump will do tomorrow, basically just to run out the clock. It's really interesting because if the Supreme Court is trying to sort of split the baby and is going to reverse the Colorado Supreme Court in the arguments that happened this week, then if they're trying to really appear Solomonic, they don't take this case. They don't issue a stay because the mere fact of taking the case is the win for Donald Trump. That is the delay. And so if they are really trying to appear to be sort of even-handed, they should just let the case go forward. There's no way that the Supreme Court would be taking that case to reverse the D.C. Circuit. No judge is going to find that Donald Trump can actually kill his political adversaries and not face criminal prosecution. That's the argument that Donald Trump is making. It's so outlandish. You just don't see that would be why the Supreme Court would take this case.
Let's just dig in on the Mar-a-Lago case because there was a lot of back and forth just in the past few days between Jack Smith and Judge Cannon. We had Mary McCord on, your podcast co-host with us, helping us walk through the law and the fact that this was, in some ways, a lot of legalese in terms of filing this under the wrong statute, if I'm getting that correct. There have been calls throughout for Cannon to recuse. And I can't tell if we're living in some type of fantasy land where as we question both her competence and her bias, that is chatter that's happening on the side, or if there is any real redress for the fact that she seems to perhaps not be up to the task and also continually giving the Trump team opportunities to move back the deadline.
Yeah, it is still, I'd say the jury's sort of out. I mean, there's no question that she doesn't have a lot of experience handling matters like this. And it appears that she also seems to have her thumb on the scale. And that's not really me saying that. That's the 11th Circuit having said it twice. That's a very conservative circuit, reversed her twice just in the investigative phase, saying you've got the law completely wrong. And by the way, when you said that former President Trump is entitled to more deference than other people, that's not the rule. Guess what? Equal justice under law. He's not entitled to less or more. So now there's this issue with respect to divulging the name of somebody who is under investigation, which would interfere with a criminal investigation. We don't know about the underlying facts of that, so it's somewhat guesswork. But what I can tell you, as Mary has, I've been a prosecutor for over 20 years, that does not get disclosed when you are doing an investigation. And to me, it is so reminiscent of the same problem she had during the investigation. So if she continues this route, it'll be interesting to see whether Jack Smith goes to the 11th Circuit and whether they sort of politely recuse her, essentially, which happens where the circuit hears the case and basically says, when we send this back, we think the better course is for a different judge to hear it. Right,
because, Michael, what we're talking about is this information being shared not just with Trump's attorneys, but with Trump himself, potentially. Yeah,
that's very true. And I want to pivot off of that, Marcus, because I'm sitting here and I'm listening to Andrew. And at the beginning of his answer, he started listing and, distinguishing between this case, that case, and this case, and that. And I'm sitting there thinking, people at home going, what the hell are you talking about? People, this is Trump advantage.
Michael, that is what the graphics department is for. Throw up a graphic. Let people see the calendar.
We should have got a graphic.
Look, but you need not just a graphic. You need a roadmap. You need to get. So where does this land with the American people? Because at the end of the day, that's who's Trump ultimately playing to. That's why Joe Biden is struggling in the polling, and that's why the country is looking at Donald Trump as some victim and some hero and what other crazy. Help us understand how all these cases stack up for the American people. I mean, you had to run into that with the January 6th investigation. Right. You had to find a way to cut through the crazy coming out of my party about this being some, weekend at Bernie's, right. All right, in the Capitol. And instead of what it really was.
It's going to take a lot of on-the-ground one-on-one conversations with folks. I mean, that was where I felt like I was the most effective during the investigations, when I was talking to rioters or people involved with Jan 6 and really pushing back factually in a conversation just like this at a deposition table, where you would say a conspiracy of why Trump is maybe being attacked and then putting papers in front of them from Bill Barr, or them saying another conspiracy theory and then putting forth statistics about how safe our election was. It's going to be hard work. And I think it's going to be a long period of our country coming back together to try to overcome these conspiracies, because the former president is entangled in so many illegal actions that it can become a little watered down at times. So we really have to make sure we're clear about the crimes that he's committed. And it's going to take a lot of legwork from folks on the ground to make sure we're having those one-on-one type conversations to rebut these conspiracies that people believe.
We need graphics. We need legwork. We need Andrew Weissman and the podcast with Mary. We need Marcus. I guess my last question is really about, as the next couple of weeks unfold, I mean, Marcus, what are you most concerned about?
I think what I'm most concerned about is the Supreme Court case. I'm thinking about like whether they take up this immunity hearing. Andrew and I both think they will, but I think it's really important for us to establish once and for all that former presidents are not immune from criminal accountability. We're a nation under laws. The same laws that apply to the former president apply to us, and that's something that we've always believed to be true and known to be true. But I think we're at a point in history now where we need the Supreme Court to come down and say that that is true, so that we don't have these issues moving on in the future.
Well, I won't hold my breath.